Hi, and welcome back to my channel. In this video, you have the first installment of my SCASL project. And so what I've decided is I'm going to break it into 5 parts, and I'm going to talk about 8 books each time. And I'm not necessarily going to separate it in between the middle grade, the junior books, and the YA. I'm just going to talk about them in 8 book chunks, whichever I have gotten to. So in this one, I have 5 of the middle grade books and 3 of the YA books. I'm actually going to start with the YA books. And I'm seated off to the side here so that I can pop the graphic. Over here, it is a longer this way graphic, so I figured I'd give myself space in editing. So for this, I'm going to talk about the first of these books that I read, and it was prior to this list being announced, and that is Beasts of Prey. And so I remember when I read this several months ago. I don't actually remember at what point, but it's fairly recently that I've read this. I enjoyed it. It wasn't 100% outstanding, but I'm definitely going to be continuing on with this series. And I just realized I need to hold the book over here to not interfere with the graphic. As far as enjoyment goes, I gave it a 4.5 stars. And so right here, I have a paper copy of this graphic. So if I'm looking down, that's what I'm looking at. So I rated it 4.5 stars, really good enjoyment rating. That's the only place that the personal impact for me comes into this. Now, the other categories that you see that I'm rating it on, there's appeal, literary quality, characters, and plot. So appeal. I have this at a 3-star because fantasy does not seem to be the thing that YA readers are drawn to. When I look at the different books that my students, high school students, are picking up, most of them are contemporary. So I rated appeal a little bit lower for this one. Then when it comes to literary quality, this is a very solid, well-structured book. It is a debut, so there's a few minor problems. So I rated this a 4-star for that. Then with the characters, I thought the characters were really compelling. They were nuanced. They were flawed. They played off against each other, and they each had different things going on that they were working with to go against each other. I thought that was pretty well done, so I gave that a 4-star as well. The same goes for plot. I thought this was a really solid building plot that leaves off in a situation where you're going to want to know more. So overall, this started off the reading list fairly well, and this one has a 3.9 average on this scale. Next, we have Who the F Are You? I read this during April, during the weekend of Peace Talks. So personal enjoyment, I can't tell them I printed one, but I think I gave this 4.5 stars. Feel free to refer over here to see what I actually rated it. I really enjoyed it. I loved the art style. I thought it was hilarious. So personally, I loved it. So when we come to appeal, okay, they're gonna love the pun of the name. Let's just say my students, they swear a lot more than I do, ever. That's part of their daily language. When you think about this, the pun, the asking about it, and then the other things that are referenced throughout it, again, it's contemporary. It depicts high school life. It depicts moving, friendships, sibling dynamics. I think this will have a high appeal rate, added to the fact that it is a graphic novel. And so a lot of times, all readers, especially when you have to read for academic classes like your English class, they're going to be drawn towards graphic novels because they are easier. When it comes to literary quality, I also rated that at 4 stars because I thought the structure of the story was really well done. I thought it went well with the artwork. Didn't have any huge qualms, I should say, with that. When it comes to the characters, yes, these are based on real life people, but they seem really applicable, really real, like they could be real people because they're based on real people. So I gave that 5 stars. And then the plot, because this is a fictionalized version of this part of her story, I thought that it had a nice, succinct plot arc and was enjoyable, so I rated that 4 stars. So that brings this average to 4.3. These are really good averages here. And then we come to a book that I've talked about a lot recently, and I don't think this score is going to be beat. And that is Bluebird by Sharon Cameron. This is one of my personal favorite books for the year. So clearly enjoyment is 5 stars. Then when it comes to appeal, World War II is something that is still has a mass appeal, but I don't know whether or not this current crop of high schoolers are necessarily going to be drawn into it. Also, the idea of Bluebird, yes, it has a lot of reference for what it actually is talking about in this book. I don't know that the kids are going to get that when they're actually reading it. I think by reading the bit of intrigue, they might be pulled in. And if, say, a teacher or librarian were to do sort of a book talk or tell them about it and tell them that it did talk about mind control, I think the appeal could be there. The appeal rating is the thing that is the lowest for this book on my criteria here. And so I rated it 3.5 because I think it could be appealing. I just don't know. It's not the most stand out in that sort of area. When it comes to literary quality, I've talked about this. I've raved about it. It's one of my favorite books. I think it's 5-star, really well done. Then the characters, they are so nuanced. They go through so much, and the changes in some of these characters are so striking. 5 stars, for sure. And then when it comes to the plot, I thought that the plot was really well done. I don't read a lot of thrillers, but this kept you guessing the whole time. I thought that was well done. I can't tell from my little document that I have up here, but I think I gave that 4.5 stars. I might have given it 5. But altogether, that comes to an average of 4.6. I don't think any book on either list is going to beat that. All right, so now we come to the middle grade list. The struggles are real when it comes to the middle grade list. I'm hoping that further entries in this list are going to bring that up, because the highest rated that I have on here, the 2 highest rated, are the lowest rated that I have on the YA list. But granted, I have read 5 of the junior books and only 3 of the YA. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Line of Mars. And I've mentioned before, this was a massive disappointment because what you get is not what it says on the tin. And my enjoyment was 3 stars. So we start off with the 3-star enjoyment level. Then we get to the appeal. And I think because the synopsis is so misleading, it's not, I mean, a kid might pick it up, but they might start reading and it's like, this is not what I wanted. I'm not finishing this. So I rated the appeal 2 stars. When it comes to literary quality, it's not bad, but it does nothing groundbreaking. And again, there's some issues with how some of the things are talked about and structured. And so I rated that 3 stars. When it comes to the characters, a lot of the characters were very flat. They were not well developed. And so I rated that 2 stars. And then finally, the plot, it was a decent plot. I just, again, kept being disappointed because it was not what the synopsis said it was. And so I rated that 3 stars, giving this an average of only 2.6 stars. This is probably going to be closer to the bottom. I hope this is the bottom and that everything else I read is really good. Next, we have the other sci-fi on the list, and that is Stowaway. Reading this on the heels of Line of Mars probably inflated my enjoyment a little bit. This was a fairly enjoyable read. It was very fast-paced, but it had a lot of typical tropes for this style Star Wars type thing that you're going to find in a lot of different sci-fi media, movies, TV shows, books, etc. And so for that, my enjoyment was 3.5 stars. So a 0.5 star more than Line of Mars. When it comes to appeal, I rated that 3.5 stars because I think the idea of being a stowaway stuck on a ship that is being chased by aliens, I think that's a potentially motivating plot idea. And what it says on the tin is what you get. When it comes to literary quality, for the same reasons as A Line of Mars, I rated this 3 stars. It's not bad at all. It's just not spectacular. So run-of-the-mill average. Then when you get to the plot, I think even though I could predict several of the things that were coming in the plot, a middle school reader is not necessarily going to be able to predict those. And for that reason, I did think that the plot was fairly well structured. There were some things that you could see coming a mile away and some twists that felt a little bit unbelievable. And so for that reason, I rated plot 3.5 stars, which brings Stowaway to a total of 3.3 stars. Next, we get to Fallout. Fallout is nonfiction, so you'll see on the graphic that I did not rate it on plot. I did not factor that. And when I did the average, I totaled the scores and divided them by 4, not by 5. So this average is based on the 4 ratings, not 5 like other books. So if there were another nonfiction, I think this is the only nonfiction on both lists, I would also do the same. For me, this was the best out of these 3 that I read in April, and I rated this 4 stars. I was pleasantly surprised. I was not necessarily interested in the topic itself, you know, the Cold War, all that sort of idea, but it was well done. So I rated it 4 stars. When it comes to appeal, I don't think that nonfiction is going to be appealing, especially to middle schoolers. I can think of one student that I've had when I taught middle school that would absolutely love this book. One. And he was really into history, into wars, into etc. It's well designed, and so maybe if they read the little subtitle here about spies and super bombs, maybe they would be more interested in it. I just don't think, because it is nonfiction, that's why I gave it a 2-star rating for appeal. Then when it comes to literary quality, I give this 5 stars because the way that Steve Sheinkin writes nonfiction targeted at middle schoolers is fantastic. He doesn't get bogged down in the details. He also doesn't dumb down and sound like he's speaking down to these kids. I thought that was really well done. And then when it comes to plot, in the case of this nonfiction, it doesn't have a plot like a fiction book, but he did have an overall structure to his narrative, and I thought that he structured it really well to prove his ultimate point. And so for that reason, I gave it 4 stars, which comes to an average of 3.75. The last 2 books have the same average rating, so right now they are tied for the number 1 spot. First of those is Maisie Chen's Last Chance. This book, both this one at 365 Days to Alaska, I rated 4 stars. When it comes to appeal, I also gave them the same rating, but I want to give a little bit of nuance here. I think that, I think that both of them, and so let me just talk about both of them. Both of them, I think, would appeal to a younger middle grade audience. I think when it gets to second half of 7th grade and into 8th grade, these are not going to be as interesting, but upper elementary, so late stage 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, I think these have really strong appeal, which is why I rated it 3.5 stars for appeal. Because for the overall category, it's not as appealing, but I think students might be interested in this. Then when it comes to literary quality, I think the actual structure, the character development, for the most part, now this one has that dual timeline structure, and I thought the characters in the present day narrative, much better developed than the others. In this one, I really appreciated how the author showed the main character's perspective on her father and what her father was doing, and how other people spoke into that and helped her see things that she had been personally blind to previously. And so for that reason, both of these for characters get 4 stars. It's really good, but not quite perfect. Then when it comes to plot, the plot for each of these is really sound structurally, not quite perfect. In this one, you have I don't remember why I rated this 4 stars, but I gave it 4 stars for the plot. It felt average, but a little bit above average. This one, I brought it down from a 5-star for plot to 4 stars because of that, the structure, the story being told by the grandfather. Didn't appreciate that as much, and for that it got 4 stars. So both of these end up with a 3.9 star. So right now, what's on the top of the list for junior books are these 2. On the top of the list for YA is this one. So there you have the first installment. I didn't have any really controversial things pop up. I was not expecting to have what I think is going to be my overall favorite of the list. Looking forward to some of the YA books. I'm really nervous about several of them, so I'm not sure what the rest of these numbers are going to look like, but we'll see in installment 2. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.